Hello everyone and welcome to another lore video, this time going into the Maelstrom. And there are various ways to do this. You could take a small fast ship. You could take a big heavy ship with everything on it like I'm doing here. You could take a medium sized ship which you could make fairly tanky. Whatever ship you're going to take in though, you're going to need the Thargoid pulse neutralizer. Without one of these, you will not get through the energy wave from the Maelstrom itself. Then once you get in, it helps if you're going to, especially if you're going to take samples, to take a pulse wave xenoscanner. And that might be all you have room for if you've only got 2 utility slots. So it depends what you want to do. Do you want to go in there and have a quick look around and then get out again? Do you want to go in there, get a few samples, then get out again? Or do you want to hang around in there and explore a bit and maybe even gather some materials to restock caustic sinks with and stuff like that? Okay, so I've kept the shutdown field neutralizer. I probably don't need to, but I have anyway. The xenoscanner, the pulse wave xenoscanner, we're going to scan the Titan ship with that to find areas on it that we can sample, as well as just see what we can find out about the thing. Caustic sink launchers, I've engineered these for extra ammunition with Ramtar. Definitely recommend you do that. Doesn't cost you very much. Very, very easy and fast upgrade to do. I've taken 3 of them, which is possibly excessive, but better safe than sorry. A few shield boosters, couple of shield boosters. Because you're not firing masses and masses and masses of limpets at the Titan to sample from it in the same way as you are from a scout or an interceptor, I'm taking the universal multi-limpet controller purely and simply just so that I can maybe repair myself and have an extra limpet if I need it, and decontaminate myself if I run out of caustic ammunition and that kind of thing. The anti-corrosion resistant cargo racks, I've got 64 tons worth of space. The rest is packed full of hull reinforcement packages, a decent shield, an experimental weapons stabilizer and AFMU. And this is so that I can carry in the hard points 5 multi-cannons. This should take down scouts and glaives in relative short order. A long-range beam laser, which with thermal vent, if you fire it at a ship or something, you can use it to quickly get your ship below 20%. Use that to lurk around in the Maelstrom and hide. The pulse laser is just something that I stuck on there because as a focused weapon, which is peanuts to run in terms of power and the distributor, you can hit something from 6 kilometers away and lure it away from the pack to come to you. I quite often use that to lure away a scout for sampling or something like that, and having a cheap weapon like that. Emissive munitions, I don't know if that works or not. As far as what it normally does is it will light up the target so that they can't go dark, they can't drop off your radar, and it also allows every other gimbaled weapon to fire upon that target up to its full range of arc, using its full range of arc. Not just your ship, but any other ship in the area. Not sure if it works on Thargoids, but there's no harm keeping it there. It doesn't cost a lot to use. And if the worst comes to the worst it will do is nothing, and it will at least perhaps lure a scout or a glaive or something away from the pack so that I have a chance of taking it out by itself. And that's it. I've got everything and a kitchen sink in here. The universal multi-limpet controller, 64 tons of cargo space, packed to the gills with hull reinforcements, and even an auto field maintenance unit for if I take any module damage, which could be very, very likely. On the internals, you might think, why am I not taking a heatsink? Because I don't really need one. If the worst comes to the worst, I can use the long-range beam laser with thermal vent to cool the ship down fast, but other than that, it's got clean drives and a low emissions power plant. Because this is my old rescue ship, put to a new use as a tissue sampling and Maelstrom explorer ship. So it's already got military grade heavy duty armour, it's already got a fully engineered low emissions power plant, it's already got fully engineered clean drives, and because of the minimal heat generated by adding drag drives, at least I can mitigate the speed loss a little bit compared to dirty drives. And yeah, it should drop naturally below 20% anytime that you're not boosting. So I've filled it up with limpets, I've set all my fire groups, and if we look at the ship itself, we can see it's got a jump range of 18.76 light years, 1500 shields, 4000 armor. I've jumped as close as possible to Tyrannus, which is within a jump, even of a very heavily loaded up Corvette, 15.48 light years, and with the Titan ship quite close to the star, Tyrannus should give me fewer interdictions on the way to the Maelstrom than going to some of the others, which can be a few thousand light seconds out, and the interdictions are probably going to be relentless. And for a slow ship like mine, yes, I can probably escape them. Yes, if they're glaives, I can probably kill them. But, you know, let's try and have as little hassle as possible getting to the Maelstrom in the first place, and try and keep as much of our ship and as many of our limpets and as much of the ammunition capability of the AFMU as we can. Try and keep as much of the ship intact as possible for when we eventually get through the Maelstrom cloud and come face to face with the Titan. Well, it's not going to break any speed records, but here we go. At a whole 345 meters per second.
You have now departed the no fire zone. Flight control signing off.
This is all about staying cold, using thruster power only. So you see when we get there why I say that. And we got through without being hyperdicted, so that's a plus. There's a Maelstrom. This has got nothing to do with my heat level, by the way. I was at 17% before and still got interdicted when I came in here on a test run. So I'm just getting lucky here. It's not because I've done anything special to avoid interdictions. No Guardian stuff on the ship because it acts the same way as any other Maelstrom system or HIP 22460, lest we forget, which also does the same thing, nobbles any Guardian items, so forget it. And an interdiction. And it's a scout. It's scouts. Okay.
Taking damage. Frameshift drive charging. 3.
They obviously can't mass lock a Corvette, so I don't have to worry about turning round and flying straight at them or anything like that, any of the other little tricks that we used to get away from the other interceptors. And it wasn't a glaive. Here we go, 2 interdictions in a row. Oh, so close. Scouts again.
Warning, shield breach. Under attack. Taking damage. Frameshift drive reboot.
Oh, that is a glaive. So the 3 Class 3 multi-cannons are the azimuth overcharged ones. They do a little bit more damage and have the benefit of auto-loader. The 2 Class 2s are just regular 2 Class 2s. I haven't unlocked 2 Class 2 azimuth ones yet. And as you can see, all 5 of them are working quite well to take the glaive down at a reasonable rate of knots. It's panic firing caustic missiles at me.
Damage detected. Flight assist off. Flight assist on. Under attack. Flight assist off. Warning, caustic damage detected. Flight assist on. Target destroyed.
Going to slow down now.
Warning,
All right.
caustic damage detected. Warning, caustic damage detected. Taking damage. Caustic substance neutralized. Warning, caustic damage detected. Warning, caustic damage detected.
And there, finally, the heat dropping a bit below 20.
Caustic substance neutralized.
That should stop any caustic generators reacting to me like proximity mines, which is another reason why I'm not boosting. So I may be taking a bit more caustic, and ooh, there we go. Now we boost. Neutralize the energy waves, so now we boost.
Warning, caustic damage detected.
Now heat doesn't matter so much. What matters is getting into this red angry cloud as fast as possible.
Warning, caustic damage detected.
And just keep going.
Neutralized.
Until you come out the other side. Don't worry too much about aiming exactly for the centre. We're beginning to see the asteroids come into view now. And once we're in amongst them, the caustic damage should stop. So obviously a faster ship would get to this point sooner, but then would perhaps be a little less capable once it gets in here, depending on what it is you want to do, of course. Alright, so we are now in the centre of the Maelstrom. We stopped taking caustic damage. We're surrounded by asteroids. And there, ahead of us, that huge shape right there, that is a Titan ship. Look at that thing. Look at the size of that thing. Yeah. It's huge. It's well named. And as we use the pulse wave Xeno scanner on it, points of interest light up in green like this, and it's a tissue limpet point. So you would go to contacts, find that tissue limpet point, and then go to subcontacts. Or if you have a ship system and ship subsystem button attached, you can do it that way. And I can take a sample from here, but only one at a time. Now, as long as I stay out of the line of sight of any ships that are around, at 17% and slowly dropping, nothing should attack me. And if I quickly need to drop my temperature, I can switch to the long range beam laser, hit the Titan with it, and drop myself down to 0 degrees if necessary. Okay, so we have a sample. Coarse hull surface. Now, this is where I didn't bring one with me, but you can bring an abrasion blaster. Yes, a mining abrasion blaster, and you can use that to blast bits off of here and collect them as well. And all of this stuff can be sold at rescue ships, and all of it, you know, collects a reasonable price. So if we continue to use the pulse wave scanner on different parts of the Titan, we will identify more points. Now there's a turret which will fire caustic missiles at you if it detects you. And you can go all over the surface of the Titan using your pulse wave Xeno scanner to highlight areas that you can get samples from, knock bits off with the abrasion blaster, and take them to the rescue ship and sell them. Again, coarse hull surface. I don't have an abrasion blaster. Will a beam laser do? Hardened surface fragments. There you go. And I was able to knock off a few bits with a beam laser, but I'm reliably informed that if you were to take an abrasion blaster instead, you would get more pieces. So let's just stay here for a moment and go into the external camera and give you a sense of the size of this thing. The Corvette is not a small ship, but it's absolutely dwarfed by this beast. Look at it. It's humongous, it's massive. Why it's surrounded by asteroids, I don't know. Perhaps it dragged them all the way with it from wherever it came. And with the familiar 8 arms, petals, limbs, points, extensions, whatever you want to call them, that we've come to know and love, we still don't know why 8 is such an important number to them. Lots and lots of details on the surface of this thing that you can spend all day just flying around and looking at. What we're gonna do is that we are at the back of the ship at the moment. And round to what they call the Maw. Pretty well named. It is like a massive mouth, but it's also something else. It's a door. Now, yes, before we take a look at the Maw, I want to show you this. Now, is this some kind of unique identifier? I've only been in Tyrannus, so I don't know if the other Titan ships have this marker or a variation on this marker, and if they do, what does it mean? Does it mean that we have 8 different clans, 8 different hives, 8 different factions within the same hive or clan? What does this mean? We're still running at 14% heat, So as long as nothing sees us, it shouldn't attack us. The level of detail on these Titans really is something else. But this is the so-called Titan Maw. And as I said, as well as resembling a big open mouth, it's a door. Interceptors fly in and out of it. Some players have said that depending on which of the Maelstroms a Thargoid interceptor comes from, it will have different markings on it. Again, this idea of insignia, of factions, of clans, of perhaps different hives. We don't know. And in the centre is kind of gooey membrane or pool, semi-solid, semi-liquid, and here we can see an interceptor going in. Briefly highlighted and vanishing. And then this membrane doorway being re-established. So, do the Maelstroms produce the interceptors and send them out? Are they just like big Thargoid fleet carriers? Is there even inside the Titan itself some hyperspace gateway where it can just gate in interceptors and then send them out into surrounding systems? Is there some kind of hyperspace teleport system in there or something that can beam in Thargoids from half a galaxy away, or even from another galaxy? Obviously these are questions we can't answer at this point. It's all speculation. The next step, you would think, would be getting in there and seeing what's inside. Very freaky, very alien, very unnerving. What is inside that Titan? What's there? And how can we find out? How can we break in? We will see what the update brings. Will it bring more on the Far God and Dedicant story? We did have a small update on that, which basically just repeated the message that anybody who went on the paper trail had already found for themselves. And a little bit disappointing, because at the end of, if you watched the last video or if you went through the paper chase yourself and you saw that at the end of it the Admiral says, oh, don't tell anybody about this, and I wondered if there might be some sinister reason for that, but according to the Galnet article that came out, it was purely and simply that they hadn't made any official announcement yet and didn't want anybody saying anything until they did. Shame. Shame really that it wasn't a more intriguing reason than that. We know that as you get closer to the Maelstrom, systems are harder to fight. And we know that in that sense, you can think of the Maelstroms and these Titan ships very much as a beachhead that the Thargoids have established, from which they will reinforce the systems around them. And the further away a system is, the harder it is to reinforce. And again, I've questioned the logic of this. I've thought, why do they have to follow human tactics? They don't. If they can jump around in hyperspace anywhere near the way we think they can, they don't need to do this. So is this whole thing some kind of thought experiment? You know, they're trying war our way. If you're not aware already, there's a new Thargoid coming out with update 16 later today, which has been called the Scythe, and it sends out collectors, which appear to have force fields around them, to pick up human escape pods. Now, picking up human escape pods is not new for the Thargoids. They've been doing it for years. There have been multiple reports of them doing this before. So why a specialised ship for it? And why now? Possible speculation on that is that it could be as a result of all the tissue sampling that we've been doing. When we found out how effective tissue sampling was at clearing alerts and controls, not so much invasions, but it still works to a point there. Is this in response? Are Thargoids now stepping up their acquisition of human tissue? And if so, for what purpose? Just to experiment on us, to find out our weakness? Maybe they'll use a biological weapon of their own against us, like we used the mycoid virus against them. Perhaps something else. Some players have speculated that perhaps they're going to reprogram them, put Thargoid implants in them, and send them back at us as an army of Thargoid cyber zombies. Whatever they're going to do with all these escape pods, I'm sure we will find out in due course. But yeah, it's been speculated that this could be in response to all the tissue sampling that we've been doing. And almost as if, you know, maybe we've been set up for this in a way. Once it was discovered just how effective tissue sampling was at clearing alerts and controls, perhaps they sort of set a little trap for us and thought, right, you know, we can make this a factor in the war. That perhaps the Thargoids are wondering why we're taking so many tissue samples, and so now they've decided to do a bit of that to find out, see if they can find out why we're doing that. And that brings up another point about the Thargoids, because for a long time now, players have been saying, oh, the Thargoids don't have any tactics, their tactics don't improve, or they don't change very much, or they don't seem to get any smarter, militarily speaking. And I've been thinking about this, and I don't think it's tactics that they lack, because they're not afraid to create new ships for new situations. They're not afraid to adapt to at least very, very severe threats, if not so much to more minor ones, like the losses of individual drones to Guardian weapons. But the concept of them all getting wiped out with a super weapon, yeah, they adapted to that pretty fast. But they appear to have no concept of subterfuge, no concept of any sneaky tactics like infiltration or ambush, or any of the tactics that a smaller force has used against a greater force over the years, and greater forces have used against everybody else to stop them becoming still greater forces. It's not that they don't have tactics, it's just that they don't seem to use any of the sneaky ones. They don't spy, they don't infiltrate, they don't lure you into a trap. If they do something, it's up front and in your face. If they were going to create clones of us, or zombie clones of us, or Thargoid programmed clones of us, or something like that, we would use them to influence the enemy, infiltrate them. We'd use them to spread propaganda. We'd use them to replace powerful figures in the government and the military. We would use them for sabotage and infiltration. But the Thargoids don't seem to do any of that. What you see is what hits you. Yes, they are quite slow to develop new ways of fighting, and they tend to take that, it appears, in quite a literal way, that if they need a new way to fight, they create a new ship for it, which is a logic that you can follow in its own way. But they've got no concept of being sneaky, underhanded gits, which is a human speciality. And so, until they learn how to get more sneaky and nasty, and we will continue to defeat them with guile, subterfuge, infiltration, sabotage, ambush, and all the other tools of warfare that are in their own way just as important as fighting face to face on the battlefield. And we will see what update 16 brings in terms of this scythe, in terms of what it can do, in terms of what it's for, and if there are any new tactics, any new strategies, any new situations that the Thargoids are now going to throw at us in what feels more and more like a thought experiment to find out more about us, while they sacrifice millions of drones. If they have some kind of longer term plan than this, perhaps it won't be long before we find out what that is. That's a quite good view of the insignia and where it is in relation to the Thargoids. So that's it. All these different areas you can look at. Now here is another limpet point, the more limpet point. And samples from here are worth a lot of money. I think I saw them paying 17 million or something more than that just for one at the rescue ships. So I guess that's why you can't just like take 8 samples at a time. That's fair enough. But I'm sitting here not needing a heatsink. There's a reason why this ship was originally called and still is called the Ferrari fridge. It might not be fast, but once it decides to run cold and hide, they don't find it. And if the worst comes to the worst and I get spotted by a glaive, I should be able to kill it. And if it's an interceptor, which I'm not really equipped to do very much about, I can go off into the asteroid fields and evade it in there. The interceptors have a hard time following you in there. Glaives and scouts can follow you through there easily, but that's fine because this thing can kill glaives or scouts, all things being equal. And there's a glaive hanging around up there, which so far hasn't seen me. But it's definitely on patrol. And you can see it using like a searchlight beam there. Very similar to how the Revenants at ground bases do. But it's a pretty impressive sight. Sitting inside this big angry cloud in an asteroid field, although we're not exactly sure why. Perhaps it was just so massive it dragged some rocks with it halfway across the galaxy to where it finally came to rest, orbiting an ammonia world in this system here in the Hyades sector. Perhaps we'll learn more about the Thargoids' hyperspace capability by examining these ships. And there's the glaive on patrol. So I could stay here and I could get samples and go and sell them at the rescue ship. I'm not really in any trouble here as long as nothing actually sees me. But we're going to say goodbye to Tyrannus the Titan for the moment and go back to the carrier and wonder, as someone tries to hit me with a caustic missile, what is going to come next. We have update 16 coming later today, and I'm going to start taking caustic damage again as I come back into the Maelstrom cloud. And if you want, you can come back in, probably in a build like this, and destroy some caustic generators and pick up some refills, and then use those to synthesize refills for your caustic sinks, so you could take fewer caustic sinks. So they're fascinating to explore, these Titans, but at the moment there's not a great deal you can do with them. Scan them with a pulse wave xeno scanner, knock bits off them with an abrasion blaster, pick them up with collectors, take samples from various parts of them and sell them to the rescue ships, and beyond that there's no way to interact with them at this point. It surely must be only a matter of time before we find a way in, or we find a way to weaken them, and perhaps in the process of weakening them make the systems they control easier to take back, because especially some of the ones within 5 to 15 light years of the Maelstroms are incredibly hard. They're going to take an absolute ton of combat, salvage, sampling, AX reactivations if they exist, and whatever else it's possible to do there just to clear one of them. Could be several weeks' work. So perhaps that's the next stage. I'm not sure I want to have Thargoids that learn all about spying and infiltration and subterfuge and sabotage and sneaky tactics, ambushes. I think it would be absolutely deadly if they learned that stuff. It could be our only edge. I'm not sure what that says about human nature. Our only edge over the aliens is our tendency to be sneaky gits. But if that's what saves us, then that's perfectly fitting for a dystopian sci-fi fantasy war. Let's see what the update brings. Meanwhile, yeah, as long as you've got a few things, you don't have to worry too much about, oh, I need lots and lots of special kit to get into a Maelstrom. People have done it with a Dolphin. You know, they've done it with medium ships like the Crate Mark II. They've gone in with Anacondas normally. There might be other people going in with Corvettes, but as you can see, I got in and I got out alive. And had the worst come to the worst, I'd have been able to repair my modules, I'd have been able to repair my hull. I could have fired a decontamination limpet if I'd run out of caustic sinks, and I would have had enough armour to survive until I could get away from the caustic source to repair myself. But what is very difficult is avoiding a little bit of damage on the way in. That's a hard bit, and there, you know, the speed of the smaller ships or the medium ships is obviously going to be their advantage, but then they will be less capable of self-repair and self-defense should they get attacked. They're all about evading and running. I can't help thinking that going into the Maelstroms is going to feature more and more as a tactic, as we find our way through that kind of goopy membrane that the ships seem to pass through, get into the Titan ship and find out what it's all about. But we've got a big update coming, which is going to bring a few things that we'll be told about and a few things that we'll have to discover, and may also include some kind of balance pass. They may decide to tone down tissue sampling a bit and bring up combat, bring up rescues, bring up deliveries a bit, balance the activities so that they all contribute pretty well. So if it does get a rebalance, but then that rebalance is fair, so that you don't need absolutely stupid amounts of things to get a system clear, or alternatively, or as well, find a way to weaken systems so that they don't take so much work to clear. Either way, or both. But we've got this big update, and it's going to be a big update. It's a 3 gig update, it's 8 hours downtime, and we will see what that brings us. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, hopefully this has let you know what you need if you want to go into the Maelstrom, and then you just decide how much you're going to take with you, whether you're going to take weapons and whether you're going to take AFMUs and whether you're going to take a ship with lots of utility slots or whether you're going to take a small fast ship that can just get in and get out and run cold. Hopefully this has given you some idea of what you might take in there and what you might do with it. I'll see you after the update.